in the short time between Elon Musk calling for Tommy Robinson's release and overtly attacking the British government with this grooming gangs row, he started the year where he left off, really, in 2024 by celebrating Reform UK. He said on X, which he owns, a new election should be called in Britain, and he urged us to vote Reform as the, quote, only hope. But if a week is a long time in politics, it's an eternity on X. And a few days later, Mr. Musk wrote, the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes.
And this was because Nigel Farage had distanced himself from Tommy Robinson, the disgraced and jailed extremist. He doesn't want him, and the word he uses, his thugs inside Reform, because Reform needs to reach deep into Conservative England if it's going to win an election. And Elon Musk doesn't like people disagreeing with him, even if he's supported them in the past, and therefore tried to discard Nigel Farage. His problem, of course, being just as Elon Musk owns X, so Nigel Farage more or less owns Reform. So that's not going to happen.
Well, and he's one of the most popular politicians in the country, actually, at the moment, polling suggests.
He certainly is. That was yet another misstep by Musk. But I think the effect of this on Reform is really, really interesting, because it's not just Tommy Robinson. Reform need to reach into, as I say, Conservative England. The May local elections are going to be a hugely consequential fight between Reform and the Conservatives, who are defending the vast majority of the seats up for grabs for historic reasons. Reform would want to at least come second and maybe win, which means taking about 500 Conservative seats, shall we say. So it's a really big struggle. If that happened, by the way, that would be the worst opposition party performance in local elections for at least 50 years. It would be very, very serious for Kemi Badenoch if that happened. But to reach those voters, Farage doesn't want to look as if he's in the pocket of somebody like Elon Musk, because, ordinary, middle-of-the-road, conservative-leaning British voters look at what Musk is saying and they're absolutely repulsed by it.
But Farage's rivals found it all quite amusing, didn't they?
Yeah, Ed Davey brought it up at PMQs and talked about the spectre of a foreign billionaire buying a UK political party. So this rumoured $100 million donation that has been dangled in front of Reform, we can only assume is not going to be forthcoming now that Musk and Farage have fallen out. And, in fairness, in the chamber, Nigel Farage kind of laughed a bit at that. I think he made a smart decision in sticking to the sort of anti-Tommy Robinson line, because, as Andrew says, he knows that if Reform are going to get any of those sort of mainstream Conservative votes, and they can't be seen as toxic, they can't be seen as unelectable. PMQs as a whole was quite an odd one this week, because Kemi Badenoch was trying to trying to not appear to be playing political football with this, and started off very reasonable and started off very, are we sure that this is not going on? Why won't you sort of have a national inquiry? But then she got a bit personal with Starmer, and that meant that Starmer could sort of point out that she hadn't raised it in the chamber. We've discovered afterwards that she hasn't met any of the victims, and it felt really quite... He's accused her earlier this week of jumping on the right-wing bandwagon, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with that language, because you can believe that there should be a national inquiry without anything to do with jumping on the right-wing bandwagon, Elon Musk, Tommy Robinson, the rest of it. There are good reasons for that. But she sort of put herself in the position of allowing Starmer to showcase that her own record on this makes her look quite opportunistic.
Andrew, there's a wider point, isn't there? And I'm sure newsrooms up and down the country are having this discussion about, why Musk's statements get so much traction and coverage across the media, or and indeed whether they should. The same goes for Trump. But how do we deal with this man?
That's a very, very interesting question, because I think we are in a completely new media political landscape, if I can put it that way. Not that long ago, Twitter was a place with a lot of abuse on it, but where people of different views engaged, and people from all parts of the spectrum would come on to find out what was going on today. And bit by bit, those kind of platforms is rather unique, but social media platforms have been pushing aside traditional media, which are mediated and edited and all the rest of it. And what's happened in the last couple of years only is that Musk has changed that from being a kind of general platform for lots of different views to being a platform absolutely dominated, thanks to the algorithm, by his own views. It's become a huge digital megaphone where he's reaching hundreds of millions of people every few minutes. And realistically, you can't turn your back on that as a democratic government and pretend it's not happening. No. It's certainly part of the reason, one of the reasons why the Labour government is so unpopular. And they have to find a way of dealing with it. And so far, I feel they haven't. Nobody has. It's a new thing. It's very, very difficult. I don't personally see any prospect of, Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves or even clever people working for them engaging with Musk on X and beating him at his own game. He owns the game. He's set the rules. He's got the algorithms. He's bought the game. He loves the limelight so much he bought the limelight. We now call the limelight X, and therefore you can't ignore him. But it's not just that it's a different kind of media platform. It's also from a different origin. This is the first time I think British democracy has been so interpenetrated by media from another place. Imagine back in the middle of the Cold War if every single British citizen every day was picking up the news as seen in the Kremlin. It's a bit like that.
I just want to say something quickly on the algorithm, because I've been trying to trace back how this all started. And obviously the big news story was Jess Phillips writing to Oldham Council saying that there wasn't going to be a national inquiry. Which she did in October. Actually, if you were on Twitter, now called X, in the run-up to Christmas, I noticed this at the time, that suddenly there were a lot of American accounts sharing screenshots of news reports and court records of the grooming gangs. Like, that was happening. Elon Musk wasn't sharing it, but that was happening beforehand. And I think I've managed to trace it back to a debate that former Spectator editor Fraser Nelson was having about immigration and integration and Britain's, he argued, positive record with that. And a number of other commentators were very respectfully pushing back and saying, what about the grooming gang scandal? And we're sharing this stuff. And I watched it over a number of days start to get retweeted by American accounts and start to go viral. And I thought, this is kind of interesting. Like, this hasn't been in the news for 5 or 6 years since that docudrama came out. And then Elon Musk, I think, must have seen it because it was starting to go viral on US Twitter. And then conveniently, the GB News story came out. So I just think it's interesting that even though he owns X, he owns the algorithm, he is still being, in a way, influenced by the own algorithm. So what I want to know is, how do we get Elon Musk to care about things like, I don't know, the leasehold scandal? Or
I think it's unlikely.
Or to draw attention, or Grenfell, or something like that. Can we get that into his algorithm, and then we could get some action?
Just to push back on you slightly there, it is utterly wrong that people are saying that the topic has not been covered in the mainstream media at all since 2018. I literally Googled BBC grooming and actually documentary. But even doing that, you get a host of documentaries, as I've written this week for the New Statesman. But it is in the daily news coverage all the time. It really is. It's just not that searchable, particularly if you're not an insider at the BBC. It's in the bulletins. It's on the website. There have been updates in Rochdale in that time. We obviously had ICSA, of which there was loads of coverage. So it's just... It's a bit just like, not true.
It's a bit like us saying, the Americans keep having these big shooting incidents, but they never talk about them. Why do they never talk about Sandy Hook? Why has that been closed down and covered up by the American media? It's as logical as that.